Hi class, in this video I'm going to go over the vegetarian part 2. So let me go to Canvas. Okay, so I just want to finish up where part 1 kind of left off. So in part 1 we finished with Young Hai. She's in this hospital, she's naked and she's holding a bloody bird in her hand that she has killed. Now I think the author is kind of making an ode to the old trope of, the bird in the cage, the housewife trapped inside the cage. And Young Hai killing this bird is really an empowering moment. She is saying, I am not going to be this housewife anymore, this oppressed bird in a cage. So she has rejected this. And so it's a really empowering moment for her, though a very violent moment. As part 1 is in the perspective of Young Hai's husband, part 2 is in the perspective of her brother-in-law, In Hai's husband. So we really learn more about him in here. We learned that he's an artist. He doesn't really make money. In Hai is the main breadwinner of the family. He's going through a midlife crisis. Um, he's really bored with his life, bored with his marriage. He's losing his youth. He describes his body as being saggy, unattractive, and so he's really trying to reclaim that youth. And he's really getting aggressive. He's aggressive with his wife in the bedroom. He's having dreams about violating women. And he's really got a desire for Young Hai, which is interesting because she's so vulnerable at this point and she's so broken, and yet he really wants her. It's something about it is very predatory, right? Um, and in all, I think this whole chapter is really, or this whole section is really about awakenings, different types, right? The brother-in-law has his kind of midlife crisis awakening, and Young Hai really has her awakening, but in a different way than he is experiencing, right? Young Hai is still very much described as her voice is like feathers, very light, almost non-existent, almost invisible, and she's really rejecting her physical body. And again, like this might be representative and symbolic of some sort of sexual trauma. Obviously, her husband violated her. But we also get the sense that her father was maybe abusive in some way. And so she's really trying to transform herself out of her body. And she really doesn't want to be sexual. She just kind of is uncomfortable in her own skin and she wants to escape it. She's divorced at this point, so we do learn that. And it's funny because the brother-in-law kind of describes her as more vegetal than sexual. So she wants to be a plant. And we think about why this is, it really can kind of relate back to this, this plantness, this kind of like non-human, very innocent, almost natural sense. Like, again, she wants to get away from the carnal, away from the body, and so this is kind of her way. And she really does experience awakening in this chapter. It also talks a lot about her Mongolian mark, which is a birthmark. Interestingly enough, though, it's a sign of youth. So when you're young, the mark is very more prominent. As you get older, it fades, as they explain in the book. But hers is still very prominent. And so this is kind of a suggestion that the brother-in-law, again, is attracted to her and wants her because she represents youth, right? Because she's youthful, and a very selfish thing on his part, right? Anyway, so basically he's an artist and he gets the idea of painting her, right? And she very much agrees to this. She wants her transformation to happen. So he paints her as this flower, and these vines, and she loves it. Like she's just completely embracing it. Again, she is experiencing an awakening, right? A transformation out of the carnal, out of her body into something definitely just different, less physical. But he's also having some issues with boundaries. He's having some issues with self-control. He's very like on the edge of art. Art versus self-destruction, art versus the obscene. He's really on the border of this, and this connects really well to Kafka's A Hunger Artist, right, where the artist is, in a lot of ways, kind of he's full of BS because he at the end states, it wasn't really about the art. It was about that he just didn't want to eat anything. And I feel like in this case, this guy's just really trying to possibly, use her as a way to have a sexual awakening because he's going through a midlife crisis. But yeah, he's indulging. He's really kind of taking advantage of the situation. But there is kind of a highlight of the theme of art versus self-destruction in here, right? And he, at times, even in the book, mentions he doesn't see her as a person, which is really weird. You know, he objectifies her. You know, there's the fact that she doesn't want to be a person. She wants to be a vegetable. But I think this is a different sense. Like, she wants to get out of the body, and he really wants to experience her body in a sexual way so that he can have this, like, sexual awakening and feel more youthful. And there's also the discussion of consent, that he views her silence as consent, which we all know is BS. And he essentially, like, sexually assaults her and rapes her. And she says no repeatedly. She's not into it. She doesn't want anything to do with him. She really likes that he is helping her find this part of herself, that is away from the body, but she doesn't want him. It's not about that for her. And so he really violates her, you know, and again, there's this hierarchy going on of him trying to control her. And she, the minute he tries to, like, control her and possess her, she rejects it. She's very upset about it. So at the very end, in High, her sister does find out, and she is horrified. And she ends up committing both of them, including the husband, to the hospital. And so that's where we're left in part 2. But really just a lot of interesting themes, right? Of sex and disobedience, obscenity versus art, taboo, and just a lot of boundaries being violated. So again, this is a story about not just you know, existentialism, but also, like, what happens while people are having this existential crisis. Part 3, we're gonna be in the perspective of the sister, and so I'll talk about that next time. All right, thanks, guys.